Where Sligo's tenants were evicted to as compared to Lucan's? Were they sent in different directions, or how did they manage to settle, or did they just move and find somewhere themselves, or was there something provided for them?
In the Sligo rent books for 1851 and 52, there's a comment in the side, let to Captain Houston, or will be let next year to Captain Houston. But those people were under notice to be gone by particular days. And if you got an eviction notice, you took it seriously. And if you weren't gone by May Day or November Day or whatever day it was, you were put out on the road. My great grandfather, Robert Cadden, he was married with a few children in Crossmolina in 1851. Now he was renting land from a tenant, not from a landlord, and the tenant wanted the land for himself, so he was evicted in 1851, and he managed to find a place in Glenelland, which was about 25 miles away. And how he found that place, I don't know. It was nearly a day's journey on a horse to come up, and another day's journey to go home. But Sligo gave the tenants here time to go. They weren't all gone. They don't appear in any of the records. But there is a court case in 1861 of a Winnie Gavin in Gowlan, which is in Erf, near Erf School. And she was brought to court for trespass in 1861. So she hadn't left. And Sligo appears to have given people at least a chance to find a place. But the law is that Lucan came back sometime around 1850 to collect his rent. And the story is told that some people questioned that was he the man that was entitled to the rent. And he got into a rage and said, he closed his book and he said, I'll tell you, you'll soon know who's entitled to the rent. And they were all evicted. That's the story they tell about Houston, or about Lucan. That Lucan showed no mercy at all, but Sligo gave people an opportunity to find a place.
Okay. Sean, thanks very much for a most interesting talk, and Kieran for the launch. Just a quick one, do you know anything about the history of the bridge in Earth that's called Houston's Bridge?
No.
It's just between Earth and it connects up to Tawny Yard, there. But I think people call it Houston's Bridge. So
The one going into the Chagas farm from...
The one going into the Chagas farm, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Going into the thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, oh yeah. Now, Houston built that bridge, and there was a couple of references to it in the records. One is when I think it's the Poor Law Commissioners were complaining that they wanted the doctor to go who was going from Leon to Bundara. They wanted him to be able to go across and into Bundara rather than having to go down by sea or down the Kilray. And he wouldn't agree to that. There's another reference as well to where two people, the Irish Bridge got washed away about 1859, and it was gone for a couple of years. But two fellas were coming from a fair in Leanon, or business out that anyway, and they were coming back, and there was a flood in the river, and they knew they couldn't cross the Irish River. So there was a Dominic McGrail who had the key to the gate, and coaxed Dominic anyway to let them through. But a couple of weeks later, they got a surprise. They were prosecuted for trespass. But they were lucky. The case was dismissed. That just for that kind of thing, you could be prosecuted. And you might say the fine and things like that were small. You could be fined sixpence, with sixpence expenses. The trouble was, each of those was a day's wages. So that a prosecution was a very serious thing, even, and the prosecution was generally successful.
Thank you. And just one quick one, if I may. The number of deserted villages that you've come across in your research, like McGuire's in Lettermclinchkin, for example, I think of them. Are there many more like that?
Surprisingly not. But I think what happened was that even though these houses were of stone, but when the Congested Districts Board came back to repopulate these places, they took the stone from the old houses and built new houses. So for that reason, a lot of the remains of the old houses are gone. But in Ogoul, where they didn't build anything, or in Derry, which is a very remote townland along the Kilray, stone houses are still there. But there's no doubt the houses were there, but I think the stones were scavenged to do building or making roads or whatever they needed to do.
Thank you.
Farming started on the peak of the Parkley Mountains. And it's in Erith, as you drive out from Westport to Leanon, and the mountains on your left, the farm ran up to the top of those mountains. And it ran from there to the Mount of the Kilray. The boundaries were fairly well chosen, and they didn't give a huge amount of problems with trespass. But there was trespass in Derrycoff on the our side, and in Drummond they were always in trouble there. The sheep came across from one side of the mountain into Glenlaw, and I think there was people nearly in Westport Courthouse every week with trouble there. But the most places that people complained about was Tolabone, where Mary's Kinnadua. There wouldn't have been any really stocking fences there. And Loudon, that's from about 1855 until about 1890. And he had those people harassed for trespass. But most of the boundary barriers were well chosen, that they wouldn't cause them problems.
Did it come to Louisburgh now? Did it come to Louisburgh?
No. In this side, you only had Lochta, and it's upper Lochta, and it stayed on that side then. And when you got down to Glenkeen, you know, the Glenkeen Farm there, and It's Sharuske, which is the next townlands that we say the lean-on side of Cadden. And it ran across the mountain, then out across the mountain out to the sea. Now there was no the boundary at Cadden caused no problem with trespass, and I think it's a credit to the we say to the herds that they didn't harass their neighbours, bringing them to court. There was no court cases for Cadden, which was surprising because Cadden was a very overcrowded area at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Right in the back of the room.